In 1839, the Qing dynasty ruled over one of the world's largest empires. For centuries, China had viewed itself as the Middle Kingdom, the center of civilization, surrounded by barbarians who paid tribute. But a storm was brewing from across the seas. Britain had undergone the Industrial Revolution. Factories produced goods at unprecedented rates, creating a hunger for new markets. China, with its 400 million potential customers, represented the ultimate prize for British merchants. But there was a problem. China had little interest in British manufactured goods. The Qing government maintained strict control over foreign trade through the Canton system, limiting Western merchants to the port of Guangzhou. Britain faced a massive trade imbalance. Silver flowed out of Britain and into China to pay for tea, silk, and porcelain. British merchants desperately needed something China would buy in large quantities. That something was opium. Grown in British-controlled India, opium created addiction on a massive scale in China. By the 1830s, millions of Chinese were addicted, and silver now flowed out of China instead of into it. The Qing government recognized the crisis. Emperor Daeguang appointed Lin Zexu as imperial commissioner with one mission: eradicate the opium trade. Lin arrived in Guangzhou in March 1839, determined to stop the flow of poison. Lin gave foreign merchants an ultimatum: surrender all opium stocks or face severe consequences. When they resisted, he surrounded the foreign factories, cutting off food and water until they complied. The merchants eventually surrendered over 20,000 chests of opium. Lin had it all destroyed in a massive public display, mixing the opium with salt and lime before dumping it into the sea. The British were outraged. For Britain, this wasn't just about lost opium. It was about national honor and the principle of free trade. The British government, influenced by merchants and the idea of civilizing China, decided on military action. In June 1840, a British expeditionary force arrived in Chinese waters. Their ships were unlike anything China had seen: steam-powered iron-hulled vessels armed with modern cannons. The first major confrontation came at the Battle of Chuanpi. British steamers easily outmaneuvered Chinese junks, while their superior artillery range meant they could fire on Chinese ships without being fired upon. Chinese commanders were shocked. Their tactics, based on centuries of experience fighting pirates and rebels, were useless against this new kind of warfare. The British could attack when and where they chose. The British captured strategic points along the coast, blockading major ports. They then sailed north toward the capital, threatening Beijing itself. The Qing court faced a crisis it didn't understand. Emperor Daeguang dismissed Lin Zexu, blaming him for provoking the British. He appointed Kishan to negotiate, hoping to make the British go away with minimal concessions. But the British had much bigger demands. Negotiations failed, and fighting resumed in early 1841. The British attacked the bog forts guarding the entrance to Guangzhou. These were China's most modern coastal defenses, recently upgraded. The result was a massacre. British steamers sailed past the forts, firing broadsides that destroyed Chinese positions. The fort's cannons, fixed in position, couldn't track the moving ships. Chinese soldiers fought bravely, but died in droves. Their matchlock muskets and jingals were no match for British rifles. Their banners and traditional armor offered no protection against modern artillery. The British captured Guangzhou and imposed a ransom. But this was just the beginning. Over the next year, British forces would capture city after city along the coast, demonstrating their complete naval dominance. In August 1842, the British sailed up the Yangtze River, capturing Shanghai and cutting the Grand Canal. This was China's economic artery, connecting the rice-producing south to the capital in the north. The final blow came at Zhenjiang, where the British stormed the city in brutal street fighting. With the Grand Canal cut and British guns threatening Nanjing, China's second most important city, the Qing had to surrender. On August 29, 1842, aboard the British warship HMS Cornwallis, Chinese officials signed the Treaty of Nanjing. It was the first of what China would call the unequal treaties. The terms were humiliating. China ceded Hong Kong to Britain, opened 5 ports to foreign trade, paid a massive indemnity of 21 million silver dollars, and granted extraterritoriality to British subjects. Extraterritoriality meant British citizens in China were subject to British law, not Chinese law. This struck at the heart of Chinese sovereignty. The emperor's authority no longer applied to all within his realm. The military lessons were clear. Chinese junks couldn't match steam-powered warships. Chinese cannons couldn't hit moving targets. Chinese soldiers with matchlocks couldn't stand against riflemen. But the deeper realization was more profound. China's entire worldview, the tribute system, the Middle Kingdom concept, the belief in Chinese superiority, had been shattered by a distant island nation. Some Chinese officials recognized the need for change. Wei Yuan, a scholar and friend of Lin Zexu, wrote illustrated treatise on the maritime kingdoms, urging China to learn Western technology to resist Western power. But conservative forces resisted. Many officials argued that adopting barbarian methods would corrupt Chinese civilization. They believed the problem was moral decay, not technological backwardness. The opium trade continued and grew after the war. With more ports open and British protection, opium flooded into China. Addiction spread, silver continued to flow out, and social problems multiplied. Other Western powers noticed Britain's success. The United States and France soon secured similar treaties. China was being carved into spheres of influence. Its sovereignty gradually eroded. The psychological impact was immense. For the first time, educated Chinese had to confront the possibility that their civilization wasn't superior, that foreign barbarians had developed something worth learning. This cognitive dissonance would fuel debates for decades. Some advocated Chinese learning for substance, Western learning for function, keeping Chinese values while adopting Western technology. The First Opium War exposed China's vulnerability, but it was only the beginning. In 1856, the Second Opium War would bring even greater humiliation, with British and French troops burning the Summer Palace. Looking back, the Opium War marked a turning point. It ended China's isolation and began what historians call the Century of Humiliation. China would spend the next 100 years struggling to find its place in a world it no longer dominated. The war revealed that military power now depended on industrial capacity. Nations that could produce steam engines, rifled cannons, and iron ships could dominate those that couldn't. China had missed the Industrial Revolution. Yet in their defeat, some Chinese began asking crucial questions. What made the West strong? Was it just technology or something deeper? These questions would eventually lead to revolutions that transformed China. The First Opium War forced China to look outward. After centuries of viewing foreign things with suspicion, Chinese intellectuals began studying Western science, medicine, and political thought. Hong Kong, ceded in 1842, became a window to the world. Though taken by force, it exposed China to international trade, ideas, and innovations. A colonial possession became an accidental bridge. The treaty ports created hybrid societies. In Shanghai, Tianjin, and Guangzhou, Chinese and foreigners lived side by side. New ideas mixed with old traditions, creating tensions but also opportunities. Most importantly, the war planted seeds of nationalism. The humiliation of defeat made Chinese question their government and their place in the world. This would eventually fuel movements to save China from foreign domination. The Qing dynasty never fully recovered from the shock. It tried reforms, the self-strengthening movement, the 100 Days Reform, but these were too little, too late. The dynasty fell in 1912. Today, historians debate the Opium War's legacy. Was it a clash of civilizations, an inevitable result of globalization, or simply imperial aggression against a weaker state? What's undeniable is that August 1842 marked when China realized it was behind. The Middle Kingdom had been surpassed by nations it considered barbarians. That realization would shape Chinese politics, society, and identity for generations. The Oriental orator explores how ancient wisdom meets modern challenges. From the shock of the Opium Wars to China's dramatic resurgence, understanding this history helps explain China's complex relationship with the world today.